Some people watch horror movies, others become obsessed with them, and in some cases, that obsession turned deadly. These are 5 real murder cases inspired by movies and TV shows. Our first case takes us to Edmonton, Canada. In 2008, a man named Mark Twitchell became fascinated by the television series Dexter.
Surprise, motherfucker!
The show follows a forensic blood analyst who secretly lives a double life as a serial killer. But unlike most serial killers, Dexter only murders people who have escaped justice. He follows a strict moral code: never kill an innocent person. Mark didn't just enjoy the series. According to investigators, his fascination slowly turned into an obsession. But unlike Dexter, Mark didn't follow the code. His victim wasn't a criminal, it was an innocent man. When police searched Mark's home, they discovered evidence that revealed a disturbing connection between his crime and the television series Dexter. Among the evidence was a document called SK Confessions. Mark claimed it was nothing more than a fictional screenplay, but detectives quickly noticed something disturbing. The story wasn't just inspired by Dexter. Large parts of it closely mirrored the crime they were investigating. It described the planning, the victim, and even details that had never been made public. For investigators, this was no longer just a screenplay. It had become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case. Detectives continued reading. They realized this wasn't the only evidence against Mark. By that point, investigators had already connected him to the disappearance of 38-year-old Johnny Altinger. Johnny had told his friends he was going on a date, but after leaving his home, he was never seen again. As the investigation progressed, more and more evidence began pointing toward Mark Twitchell. He denied any involvement. He insisted that SK Confessions was simply a fictional screenplay. But prosecutors argued that the screenplay wasn't just fiction. It closely reflected what investigators believed had actually happened. In 2011, Mark Twitchell was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. To this day, his case remains one of the most well-known examples of a real murder linked to a television series. Our second case was inspired by the horror movie Scream. Released in 1996, the film became one of the most successful horror movies of all time. It follows 2 high school students who hide behind the Ghostface mask while turning murder into what they see as a real-life horror movie.
It's 9:50, September 22nd, 2006. Unfortunately, we have the grueling task of killing our 2 friends.
10 years later, investigators would find disturbing similarities in a real murder case. This time, the story takes us to Pocatello, Idaho. In September 2006, 16-year-old Cassie Jo Stoddart agreed to house sit for her aunt and uncle while they were out of town. She had no idea that 2 of her classmates had been planning something for weeks. According to investigators, they were fascinated by horror movies, especially Scream, and they wanted to create a real-life horror movie of their own. Cassie had become their chosen victim. The 2 classmates were Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk. Both were just 16 years old. To everyone around them, they seemed like ordinary teenagers, but investigators later discovered that the pair had spent weeks planning what they called the perfect murder. This wasn't a random attack. They had carefully chosen their victim long before that night, and that victim was Cassie. On the evening of September 22nd, 2006, Brian and Tori visited the house while Cassie was house-sitting. At first, everything seemed completely normal. They talked, watched a movie together, and acted like they were simply spending time with a friend. But according to investigators, every minute they spent inside that house had already been planned. Cassie's boyfriend, Matt Beckham, was there that evening too. When Brian and Tori arrived, the 4 of them spent time together inside the house. They talked, watched Kill Bill Volume 2, and for a while, everything seemed completely normal. Nothing about the evening suggested that something was about to go horribly wrong. After some time, Brian and Tori said they were leaving to go to the movies. Cassie had no reason to question them. They were her classmates and people she trusted, but according to investigators, that wasn't their real plan. Before leaving the house, detectives believe they secretly unlocked a basement door. They intended to come back later without being noticed. Not long after they left, Matt decided it was time to head home. He even suggested that Cassie should come with him instead of spending the night alone, but she decided to stay and continue house-sitting for her aunt and uncle. As Matt drove away, the house became completely silent. Then, Brian and Tori returned. Not long after Matt drove away, the lights inside the house suddenly went out. Cassie assumed it was nothing more than a power outage, but she wasn't alone. Brian and Tori had already returned through the basement door they had secretly unlocked earlier that evening. As Cassie moved through the dark house, the family's dogs suddenly began barking toward the basement. They refused to leave the door, as if they knew someone was hiding below. Moments later, Brian and Tori confronted Cassie.
Killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke.
I'm shaking.
I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie.
According to investigators, she was stabbed multiple times. The following day, after family members were unable to reach her, they went to check on the house. Inside, they made a heartbreaking discovery. As detectives began piecing the case together, their investigation quickly led back to Brian and Tori, but the evidence they uncovered next would leave almost no doubt about who was responsible. Brian and Tori had recorded themselves on video before and after the murder. In the recordings, they talked about carrying out the perfect murder. They laughed, quoted lines from Scream, and spoke about the attack as if they were characters in their own horror movie. For investigators, those videos removed almost any doubt about what had happened. When police questioned the two teenagers, both tried to deny their involvement, but the evidence against them was overwhelming. In 2007, Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk were both found guilty of first-degree murder. They were each sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Our third case was inspired by the movie Natural Born Killers. Released in 1994, the film follows a young couple who travel across the country, murdering anyone who crosses their path. The movie quickly became one of the most controversial films ever made. For most people, it was just another violent crime movie, but not for everyone. Just 1 year after its release, a young couple from Oklahoma decided to turn fiction into reality. The couple was Sarah Edmondson and Benjamin Darris. Both were just 18 years old. The two had spent the night watching Natural Born Killers while using LSD. Not long afterward, they packed a handgun, got into Sarah's car, and left Oklahoma. At first, it looked like nothing more than a road trip, but over the next few days, their journey turned into a violent crime spree. On March 7, 1995, the couple arrived in Hernando, Mississippi. There, Benjamin Darris shot and killed 58-year-old William Savage. He had never met the victim before. Police believed the attack was completely random, but William Savage wouldn't be their last victim. Hours later, the violence continued. The couple drove to Louisiana. There, Benjamin opened fire on convenience store clerk Patsy Byers. Unlike William Savage, she survived the attack, but she was left permanently paralyzed. By now, police across multiple states were searching for the young couple. Their journey finally came to an end in New Orleans. After a brief chase, both Sarah Edmondson and Benjamin Darris were arrested. During the investigation, both admitted they had watched Natural Born Killers before the attacks. The case quickly attracted national attention, not only because of the brutal crimes, but because it reignited a nationwide debate. Could a movie really inspire someone to commit murder? Or were Sarah and Benjamin simply looking for something to blame? Benjamin Darris was later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sarah Edmondson was also convicted for her role in the attacks and served several years in prison before being released. Our fourth case was inspired by the movie The Matrix. Released in 1999, the film tells the story of a man who discovers that the world around him isn't real. Instead, humanity is trapped inside a giant simulation controlled by machines. The movie became a worldwide phenomenon, but for one young man, the line between fiction and reality began to disappear. His name was Joshua Cook. He was just 19 years old. According to court documents, Joshua became deeply obsessed with The Matrix and believed he was living inside a simulated reality. His attorneys initially planned to argue that this belief affected his ability to distinguish reality from fantasy, though he later pleaded guilty. On February 17, 2003, Joshua walked into the basement of his family's home in Oakton, Virginia. Moments later, he murdered both of his adoptive parents, but what investigators discovered after his arrest made the case even more disturbing. As investigators continued building their case, They searched Joshua's bedroom for anything that could explain what had happened. Among the items they found were several The Matrix posters and other memorabilia from the film. The discovery quickly caught the attention of the media. Newspapers across the country began referring to the case as the Matrix defense. Many people questioned whether a movie could really influence someone to commit murder. Prosecutors strongly disagreed. They argued that Joshua knew exactly what he was doing and should be held fully responsible for his actions. Before the case ever reached trial, Joshua pleaded guilty to murdering both of his adoptive parents. He was later sentenced to 40 years in prison. To this day, the Joshua Cook case remains one of the most well-known crimes ever associated with the Matrix, because for Joshua, the line between fiction and reality had completely disappeared. Our final case wasn't inspired by a movie. It was inspired by an internet legend. His name was Slender Man, a tall, faceless figure, dressed in a black suit. According to the story, he stalked children from the shadows. The character first appeared online in 2009. It was created as part of a Photoshop contest. But within just a few years, millions of people believed the legend was real. Most treated it as nothing more than an internet horror story. But for two 12-year-old girls from Waukesha, Wisconsin, Slender Man wasn't fiction. He was real, and they believed they had to prove their loyalty to him, no matter the cost. On May 31st, 2014, the two girls invited their best friend, 12-year-old Peyton Leutner, to a sleepover. The next morning, they walked together into a wooded park near Waukesha, Wisconsin. To Peyton, it felt like an ordinary day with friends. But according to investigators, Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier had been planning something for months. They believed that sacrificing their friend would prove their loyalty to Slender Man, and in return, they believed he would protect them and allow them to live in his mansion deep inside the forest. Peyton had no idea what they were about to do. Moments later, the plan was set into motion. As they reached a secluded area of the woods, the three girls stopped walking. For a few moments, everything seemed normal. Then, Morgan and Anissa suddenly turned on their friend. According to investigators, Peyton was stabbed 19 times. Believing she wouldn't survive, the two girls left her alone in the forest. Instead of calling for help, they began walking for miles. Their destination wasn't home. They told detectives they were trying to find Slender Man's mansion, a place they believed existed deep inside the Nicolet National Forest. But against all odds, Peyton was still alive. Despite her injuries, Peyton somehow managed to crawl out of the woods. She eventually reached a nearby road. There, a passing cyclist spotted her and immediately called 911. Doctors later said it was nothing short of a miracle that she survived. Meanwhile, police launched a massive search for Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier. Just hours later, the two girls were found walking along a highway. When detectives questioned them, they calmly explained why they had done it. They believed Slender Man was real, and that killing their friend was the only way to prove their loyalty to him. Both girls were eventually found not criminally responsible by reason of mental illness, and were committed to psychiatric institutions. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.